Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Run It Back, the show we try to get things right the second time. It is officially here. Outlaws of Thunder Junction is on Arena. It's been about 24 hours or so. And so, on today's episode, we're going to be going over a draft that we had an opportunity to do yesterday, right at release. We did about 5 or 6 drafts or so. Did really well with most of them. And this one, you can see we did 3-0 in the traditional draft, which is great. And so, we'll dive into it now. As we open up Pack 1 Pick 1, we see lots of fun, cool cards, things like Plan the Heist, Wrangler of the Damned. These are great ones. I'm really excited about Spinewood's Paladin, so hopefully we can get that one on the wheel. But, early on in the format, you just take your rares, see how they play. This one looks very powerful. One of the things that most people do not note, mainly due to the wall of text here, is that whenever Roxanne enters the battlefield or attacks, you get the Meteorite and deal 2 damage. And so that's a free crime trigger. It works out really well. The only thing she is not is an outlaw, but overall, this card is super, super good. Great for fixing, great for fun, easily picking every time. Moving on to Pack 1, Pick 2, we see a couple of options. We could go with the Doc Arlock sort of plan and kind of utilize recasting things. The other thing I like here is an Arid Archway to really, power out things like Roxanne, get a little card advantage while we're at it. But Honest Rutstein is great because it also does the same thing, powers out Roxanne a turn early, assuming you have your colors fixing, and then also rebuys it later. One thing I noticed in my, 5 or 6 leagues yesterday is the idea that you really still need some early threats while also being able to go late. You need some card advantage. There's a couple times where things were looking good for us and then we just sort of ran out of stuff to do. We're in top deck mode and our opponent's top deck better than we did. So you want to have some ability just to kind of continuously utilize the mana that you're going to end up having because you can get to that later game in this set. Pack 1 Pick 3. Not a whole lot here for us. We do have a Plan the Heist, which does kind of look good, but we've picked 3 colors and none of them are blue. Notably, like Roxanne plays really well with something like this, but Cactarantula just looks really good. If you have a Desert in play and an Honest Rutstein, this sort of thing comes down on turn 4, which a 4-mana 6/5 with some sort of hindrance on targeting it looks really, really good, really strong. Also, it's a great card to buy back with Honest Rutstein. Everything about this card just sort of screams great, but this does mean that we want to end up picking up a couple deserts, as most decks do. Pack 1, Pick 4. We saw Forma Posse, we saw Bristleback Sentry, things like Outlaw Medic also look good, but none of those things really looked that exciting for our deck, so we just picked up an on-color Festering Gulch, which means that we could be a green-black little splash red, we could be a red-green splash little black. Both of them look great. Also, looking at Vault Plunderer here is a great option. Pack 1, Pick 5. Happy to see a Spinewood's Paladin. I would play like 3 or 4, maybe 5 of these things in my deck, so grabbing one here because nothing else is really that exciting. We do see a Mourner Surprise, which makes it even better with an Honest Rutstein, so that way you pick back the Rutstein gets back a Roxanne. By that point, you're hopefully having a whole bunch of mana, and things just sort of continuing to go on from there. Pack 1, Pick 6. We do see a Full Steam Ahead, which I think is a very good card, but I do also want to make sure that we're not going to end up taking a whole lot of damage early. Thunder Salvo and Deserts do kind of function the same thing on turn 2 a lot of the times, killing off a 2-drop with 2 toughness, but Deserts do also has a potential to play a little bit better in the late game. If you're going to be playing 5-mana and 6-mana cards, having Thunder Salvo doesn't really play very well. Having Deserts do plays a lot easier because then you can end up making sure that you can clear a 5 or a 6 power thing. This plays pretty well, pretty much in red, white, and blue, red only. Moving on to Pack 1, Pick 7. We do have a Soured Springs here, which can end up playing well in that desert sort of thing. We also have a Lively Dirge, which I think plays really well with going and getting something like a Cactarantula or Roxanne, putting in the bin, getting Rutstein back with the second mode. Maybe if you can also get a 1-drop, that's great, but then you end up getting the Roxanne back from the deck, so this is certainly something there, but having a 2-3-on-3 I think is really important. There's a lot of 3-2s, a lot of 2-2s, a lot of things that are coming down and getting you, and this one getting a little bit of card advantage while also maintaining that board presence has been really powerful. And so I really like this Patient Naturalist. Worst case scenario, it also ends up just getting you that treasure to get closer to things like Roxanne or Cactarantula. Pack 1 pick 8, Raven of Fell Omens has been really, really powerful. I think it's one of the best crime abilities. Not necessarily just because it is super powerful, but also just because it's cheap and you continue to peck in the air, and then also getting those crime triggers based off like things like Roxanne and Desert's Dew. This keeps you alive very quickly. It's very easy to end up gaining 4 or 5 life with this thing over the course of a game, and keeping you alive is something very powerful in this format. As we look at the wheel, we see this Full Steam Ahead came back. I could look at this Deadeye Duelist, but I don't think it's that good. I think I'd much rather have other things to do on 2. A 1-3 doesn't really play all that well in this format with lots of 3-2s around. But Full Steam Ahead looks good if you've got 2 or maybe 3 creatures, especially if there's some of these sort of, smaller creatures, and then you maybe 1 large one. Giving everything trample, can only be blocked by 1 creature. That looks very good. Pack 1 pick 10, we got this Prickly Pear. It's no inside source, but it is still very good. Being able to attack as a 3-2, being able to pump something up to 4 power or greater can be relevant in the red-green deck. I think this one's pretty good. Not too thrilled about this Drover Grizzly. Lots of X2s, lots of 2 damage cards like Steer Clear, like Desert's Dew, and like Thunder Salvo all take care of this card pretty quickly. Pack 1 pick 11, I think this Desperate Bloodseeker looks really good in most decks. It is a crime trigger, which is great for things like Raven of the Fell Omens. It also has lifelink, so therefore you end up keeping you alive. And then, of course, also milling yourself for things like the Honest Rutstein all play very well in this deck. So happy to have a Desperate Bloodseeker. Deadeye Duelist we picked up mainly for the sideboard. I don't think that this desert is really what we want to be doing. I know it surveils. I know it comes into play untapped, but just in general, I don't love the Conduit Pylons. Mourner Surprise, great pickup. And then, of course, we have a Thunder Salvo here. It's a good sideboard option. If we ran a short and only had the 1 Desert's Dew, I probably would play it. But in general, we're probably not playing this in our red-green decks. Pack 2, pick 1, we opened up a Caustic Bronco, and you would think, oh, I'd want to end up using cheap cards for this, but this plays well in both cheap cards and expensive cards, because if you have cheap cards, well, you don't mind attacking with it alone to get the cheap cards. If you have expensive cards, well, then you end up wanting to crew with those expensive cards, things that have 3 power or greater, of which we have quite a few already, right? So we've got the Cactarantula, the Roxanne, the Spinewood Paladin, and the Honest Rutstein. So as these things come down, they can end up crewing attacks and maybe flipping up something else. We actually end up getting somebody for 6 as we domed them with our Cactarantula off the top with Caustic Bronco. Notably, we also see to Shoot the Sheriff. We would not expect this one to wheel. We see Cactarantula. This one might wheel if nobody else is really in green, but also this other Patient Naturalist down here looks like something we would like to see. Pack 2, pick 2, we see a Free Strider Lookout. This card looks really good to me. Crime is a pretty simple thing to do, particularly if you've got lots of deserts, and so being able to play this thing and commit a crime very quickly looks a good one. I also see a Free Strider Commando looks really good, and even a Bandit's Hall played really well. I don't remember if this deck had a Bandit's Hall in or not, but we've had a Bandit's Hall in other strategies, and this has played particularly well. Crime is essentially free for a lot of different things, and then being able to draw a card or 2 off of this thing looks really, really powerful. Pack 2, pick 3, we see a Mindslaver, and I thought I might get this one on the wheel. We also see a Stoic Sphinx, which looks really good, but I just felt like we were already sort of in a black-green shell and splashing for double blue. Maybe it's very possible. I was really happy to see a Raven of Fell Omens again. We already felt like we had quite a few crimes with Roxanne and the Desperate Bloodseeker, the Desert's Dew, just lots of stuff going on. We could have done a Throw from the Saddle. I think this is really good, but in general, you want a little bit stronger creature than like this Desperate Bloodseeker and Raven of the Fell Omens for this sort of thing. So the other key here would be a Desert's Dew. I felt like we had the Thunder Salvo at the time. I wanted this Raven of Fell Omens really to pop off, and if we ended up wheeling this one or that one, I thought we'd be in good shape. Pack 2, pick 4. We saw a Rakish Crew, which is okay. This another Mourner Surprise, a Spinewood's Paladin, which all looks great as well. We ended up going with this Longhorn Sharpshooter just because I thought it was extremely powerful. You get the plot, and when you plot it, you get the 2 damage, which is also another crime trigger. So one thing to note is when I originally read this card, I thought it was 3 to plot. It is 4, which kind of makes it a little bit worse, but it still is very good. 3/3 reach looks good in this format. It stops lots of little flyers, things out of blue-white deck. The Ravens that we just talked about, while also getting a crime trigger and a shock out of something, looks really, really powerful. Good card here. Pack 2, pick 5, we see another prickly pear, which kind of places us pretty squarely into the Jun build. I'm not upset about that at all. We do see an ankle biter here. Also, a Hollow Marauder could look pretty well. Looking back on this one, I might end up taking this Hollow Marauder. I thought prickly pear was going to be necessary, but as we see here, we've got 2 Ravens, Desert's Dew, Caustic Bronco. There's lots of early stuff going on. I probably would take this Hollow Marauder again because it's a great hit off to the Caustic Bronco. It also crews the Bronco, and in theory, it isn't a 7-mana card. You don't cast this card for 7. You cast it for about 4, maybe 3, and that is all good value for it. Pack 2, pick 6, we see a Spinewoods Armadillo. This card is one of the exact ones that we want. I do see a Bristling Backwoods, and I thought about both of these cards pretty quickly, but I ended up going with the Armadillo, mainly because it gains 3 life. It's also something you can discard on 2, play out a, quote, naked Honest Redstein because nothing's died already, but you still get your value by getting your Armadillo back, so you kind of get the best of both worlds in an Honest Redstein deck. Pack 2, pick 7, we got an Intrepid Stablemaster. This was awesome for us. It's a ramp spell. It's a reacher. It also ends up casting our Caustic Bronco if we don't have any black mana. Things worked really well for Intrepid Stablemaster. This thing was awesome. Pack 2, pick 8, we picked up a Desert. This is great. We looked at Explosive Derailment, and I thought, you know, that's a good card. I'm happy to have it. Bandit's Hall, also good card. Happy to have it. But we just need like 3 or 4 more Deserts, so I'm going to pick this up, this Jagged Barrens. Pack 2, pick 9, nothing really that exciting. We do see a Cactarantula, but having an Armadillo and a couple of 5-drops, I thought, well, I don't want to go too big. Plus, we were really looking for deserts. I don't mind playing these off-color deserts. There's always an opportunity in pack 3 that we might splash something blue, but in general, I'm just playing this over a mountain and happy to have it. I love splashing just about any desert that we can. I'm not playing a dual off-color desert, like I wouldn't play a blue-white desert in this deck, but I would definitely play this Eroded Canyon here, and the crime triggers are definitely worth it. Pack 2, pick 10, we did end up picking up the Bandit's Hall. This looks great because we were pretty squarely in the 3-color deck, and this one also works out great if you can pick up things like a Skullduggery, because Skullduggery is a very easy 1-mana spell to cast off of your Bandit's Hall while keeping some tempo and maintaining crime triggers. Desert's Dew, Pack 2, pick 11, we thought that this was incredible. Happy to have it. I was stunned, absolutely stunned when we picked up this Desert's Dew. Jailbreak Scheme, probably just better than a 3-2, I think, and of course some other blue cards to sort of wrap things up. Pack 3, pick 1, we were looking at a Nexus of Becoming, which I thought was a really powerful card that ended up putting things like our Cactarantula or Roxanne into play. Maybe a turn early, well, or maybe just in general, continuing to do that. You get to draw a card every turn on combat, and then you can exile a creature and put a 3-3 Golem into play. But we picked a Calamity, and let me tell you, this card was incredible. Maybe Nexus of Becoming is better, I don't know, but Calamity was absolutely insane. We used Roxanne to get 2 more additional triggers out of it. We used Spinewoods Paladin to gain 6 life. We ended up swinging for lethal with some Armadillos, and these are all turns where you play these cards and you can saddle with a Summoning Sick creature, getting 2 more triggers out of the process. We also ended up triggering it with a Raven of Fell Omens one time to therefore get triple crime triggers. It was very, very powerful. This card should be a slam dunk every time. Pack 3, pick 2, I love this Arid Archway. There wasn't a whole lot else for us in the pack. We do see a Skullduggery down here, but continuing to add to the desert theme while also getting some card advantage out of this thing. So if you have 2 lands in hand, but one of them is an Arid Archway, you essentially have 3 lands in hand, and that really keeps you going. Now, this one is all colorless, but if we look down here, we see things like Calamity, Cactarantula, Spinewoods Armadillo, all of these cards, even our 3-drops here, plot costs, whatever, like they all have, with the exception of Honest Redstein, 2 colorless mana in the mana cost. So this thing is very powerful in a lot of different decks. The blue-red deck is probably the only one where I would stray away from it because you have lots of multi-spell turns, and a lot of those multi-spell turns require to have lots of colors. But outside of that deck, I think this card is really good, really powerful, and I'm taking it early and often. Pack 3, pick 3, we did pick up another Cactarantula. I looked at this Tumbleweed Rising, but I thought that I'd much rather just have a big creature rather than something that relies on having another big creature. Pack 3, pick 4, we did pick up our Skullduggery. I looked at Rakish Crew, but we didn't have that many Outlaws. We also kind of looked at Boombox, but I thought we had enough kill spells as it is. So Skullduggery, like we mentioned, playing really well with this Bandit's Hall, and it was a happy pickup there. Pack 3, pick 5, we've got another Desert Stew. We played all three. All three were great. Happy to play as many of these as possible. We do see a giant beaver, which kind of fills out that curve right on 4, which we're missing. We have no 4 drops. But at this point, we've got a bunch of 2s, or maybe this Bandit's Haul. So we're kind of ramping a little bit up into 5 rather than sticking on 4. Pack 3, pick 6, we saw another Cactarantula. We do have this Creosote Heath, this green-white desert, and I thought maybe we want to end up playing that one. We did end up playing it. It was great. Looking back on it, we might take this Blood Hustler. This card, I think, was one that really sort of surprised me. 2 mana, 1/1, crime triggers mad, but the fact that it can trigger crime on its own repeatably is really good, and I sort of overlooked that right away, but this thing is going to be really powerful, and you're going to lose to it a lot, or you're going to win with it a lot. This Blood Hustler, I think, is something we should be keeping our eyes peeled for. Pack 3, pick 7, we got a Mourner's Salvo. I didn't want to play this Consuming Ashes, mainly just because the double black, and we had 3 Desert Stew. I didn't think that was really that necessary, so I picked up another Mourner Surprise to continuously get back Rutstein or other big threats, and we didn't end up playing this one. I probably want this Consuming Ashes back. Pack 3, pick 8, we got a Consuming Ashes. I don't think we actually played this one in the main deck, but it was a great card to have in the sideboard. It did come in 2 different matches, and it won us our game 3s, at least in one of them, so great to have. I'm a little low on this card. 4 mana to exile a thing is kind of a lot in this format when you've got things like Desert Stew and Skullduggeries. There's lots of ward in the format, particularly in green. Lots of things that trigger off of crime or protect from crime, like Snakeskin Veil. So 4 mana to have it countered like that can be pretty backbreaking. I'd be a little cautious of getting too many of these effects. Pack 3, pick 9, we got double Spironwood's Paladin, so we're going to go and pick up one of those. Happy to have it, happy to play it. This card was great. Want some more. Pack 3, pick 10. We picked up this Bristleback Sentry, which I think is really good in the red-green sort of deck. And we've got plenty of things to sort of trigger off of it later in the game. It also ends up crewing the Caustic Bronco for essentially free on its own, which I thought was really good. We did not end up playing it, but it was a great card for the sideboard against like the Outlaws strategy. Pack 3, pick 11, another sideboard card in the Thunder Salvo, great against Outlaws. Pack 3, pick 12, we've got this Rodeo Pyromancers, which we did not play, a Shifting Grift, and then wind up with a 3rd Mourner's Surprise overall. Taking a look at the deck, we can see we've got quite a few deserts in here. I think we played 5 deserts overall. Lots of early black cards, including 3 Desert Stew and 2 Ravens, plus things like Honest Rutstein to keep us going, and then to finish off the game with things like Cactarantula, Calamity, Roxanne. Lots of early game interaction, lots of late game power. This deck felt great. It is probably the exact same thing I want to be doing over and over and over again in this format. I had lots of fun with it. It wasn't boring. There was all kinds of good tension and fun with the whole thing. Notably, we also had some life gain with the Spinewood's Armadillo and the Raven of Fell Omens, and I found that to be very powerful. Some things, especially with the ability to ping you down with their lands, as well as different crime triggers. There's lots of little ways that you can get chunked out, or nickel and dime down to 5 or whatever, and then you get, alpha struck for it. And so to be able to gain that little bit of life back and keep you in that safe range has been really powerful in the format. If you want to have your draft reviewed on Run It Back, feel free to send me an email at runitbackmtg@gmail.com or a message over in the Discord. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for your time, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.